Thanks for joining us for compliance video number 3, recruiting. In this video, we will cover the following: general definitions you should know, permissible recruiting materials, rules regarding telephone calls and text messages, as well as electronic transmissions, off-campus contacts and various contact restrictions, tryouts and visits, and then finally, best practices for recruiting. For our purposes, a prospect is a student who has started classes for the 9th grade. Much of the recruiting legislation not only applies to the prospect, but also to the prospect's parents or legal guardians, so keep this in mind as you consider what is and is not permissible in recruiting. To recruit off campus, you must have passed the annual NCAA recruiting test. Only those who have passed the test may make recruiting contacts off Washburn's campus. This includes meeting with prospects off campus during a visit, or providing any kind of transportation off campus. All coaches are required to know about recruiting periods. However, basketball and football coaches are the ones who have specific recruiting calendars that make use of these different recruiting periods. A contact period is one in which in-person off-campus contacts and evaluations are permissible. Remember that with contacts, the prospects must be contactable, which we will take a look at in just a few more slides. During an evaluation period, only off-campus evaluations are permissible. You can go watch a game, but you may not have a conversation with players or their parents. During a quiet period, coaches may only have on-campus contact with recruits. No in-person off-campus contacts or evaluations are permissible during a quiet period. Every sport deals with dead periods, as this is the time immediately preceding the NLI signing. As you know, during a dead period, you may not engage in any recruiting contacts or evaluations on campus or off campus. You may make phone calls, email recruits, send faxes and text messages, but you may not have any face-to-face contacts with prospects on or off campus. Also, during a dead period, you may not be involved with any off-campus speaking engagements involving prospects. With recent rules changes, much of the legislation pertaining to recruiting has aligned the dates for sending recruiting materials, having off-campus contact, phoning and texting prospects, and inviting them to campus for tryouts. June 15th, preceding the prospect's junior year, is the key date you will need to remember. Prior to June 15 of a prospect's junior year, you may only send a questionnaire, camp brochure, admissions materials, or a letter in response to their inquiry into the program. Basically, you may not send materials designed to recruit the prospect until June 15 prior to their junior year. At that point, you may send all kinds of recruiting materials by mail or electronically. You should note, however, that you may not send video. The same start date applies to phone calls and text messages. While prospects may phone and text you at any time, you may not return the call or text until June 15 preceding the prospect's junior year. After that date, you may call or text as much as you like, but please be considerate of prospects' schedules. It's a good idea to ask the students you are recruiting how and when they would prefer to be contacted. With all the advances in technology, the recruiting rules have been challenged to keep up. As a general rule, for all electronic transmissions, that's social media like Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, and instant messaging, you must keep the communications private. You can use the email function of Facebook, for instance, but you may not post to a prospect's wall where everyone can see the message. You may not send audio or video clips, and you may not send a text or make a phone call to a prospect during one of your games. Like the rules for recruiting materials, phone calls, and electronic transmissions, June 15th prior to a prospect's junior year marks the first date that coaches may have off-campus contact with prospects and their parents. Keep in mind that while you may evaluate prospects of all ages, you may not have contact with them or with their parents until June 15 prior to their junior year. For off-campus contacts, there are some other restrictions. If you plan to meet with prospects during the school day, you must first get permission from the principal for the contact. Also, if you are at a game, you may not have contact with prospects before the game or after until they have been released by the coach. Furthermore, the passing of notes to prospects by way of a third party, like a coach, is expressly prohibited. You may, however, speak with the parents of prospects as long as they are contactable. That is, as long as it is on or after June 15th prior to their junior year and you are in a contact period. That means you could never talk with the parents of a freshman student at an off-campus location. If prospects are involved in a multi-day tournament, you may talk with them if it is on a day when there is no competition. So now let's talk about having prospects on campus. First of all, we have tryouts. As with the other legislation, you may have prospects on campus for a tryout starting June 15 before their junior year. Other requirements depend on the kind of prospect who is trying out. For high school prospects, they must have completed their season or be enrolled in a term other than the term of their traditional season. For a high school baseball player, this means he can try out after his season ends in May or during the fall, but for a basketball player, she is limited to the time after her high school season ends or the summer for her tryout. For two-year transfers, they may try out after the conclusion of their season or any time after their eligibility is exhausted. These rules pertain even to those two-year prospects who are not competing with their two-year school's team. Four-year transfers may try out after the conclusion of their sports season as long as permission to contact has been granted. Remember that prospects are limited to one tryout per institution per sport and that your tryout may only last a maximum of 2 hours. Also, NCAA rules require that prospects submit a recent physical, and our athletic training staff requires that it be conducted by a physician, and we have the full physical form. We will not accept a statement of release for physical activity instead of the actual physical. Along with the physical, the prospect must submit the sickle cell form with either the test results attached or waiving the test. If the prospect is not yet 18, a parent's signature is required on the waiver. For the documentation of the tryout, you will need to complete the tryout form and get the prospect's signature and the parents, if the prospect is not yet 18, on the liability waiver. You may turn in all the paperwork after the tryout. Unofficial visits are those visits prospects make at their own expense. Prospects may make as many unofficial visits to campus as they would like and whenever they would like. While on an unofficial visit, you may provide up to 3 complimentary admissions to the prospect, take them to view off-campus practice or competition sites in your sport, and treat them to a meal on campus. If all the campus dining facilities are closed, however, you may take them off campus for a meal. While you should keep records of all your contacts with prospects, you will only need to submit unofficial visit paperwork if you provide a tryout, meal, or complimentary admission. For these, you must turn in the unofficial visit form along with the receipt for the meal and the tryout paperwork if there is one. The start date for official visits is the only one that did not change to align with the June 15 date for other recruiting rules. Prospects may only take official visits once they have started classes for their senior year. There are no limitations on the number of official visits prospects may take, but they may only take one official visit per institution. A prospect's official visit is limited to a 48-hour period, and the visit officially starts when the prospect arrives on campus. This means that if a prospect travels to Topeka on a Thursday evening, stays at the Capitol Plaza overnight, and then comes to campus at 9 a.m. on Friday morning, the 48-hour time period does not start until 9 a.m. on Friday. Since the official visit is considered a paid visit, you may provide lodging and complimentary admission for up to 3 persons. You may also treat the prospect and those along for the visit to 3 meals per day. You may supply up to $30 per day to your student host for entertainment expenses, and if you have the same host in charge of another prospect, you may supply an additional $15 per day to that host. During the visit, you may provide transportation as well as reimburse the prospect for the actual cost of transportation to and from campus, or you may provide the campus mileage rate of reimbursement. You may only pay the airfare for a prospect, not for his or her parent. If you have a coach pick up prospects from their home or school, that coach must be certified to recruit off campus. With official visits, prospects must first be approved for the visit. For all prospects, you will need to submit the pre-approval form along with the prospect's high school or college transcript. In addition, high school prospects must be registered with the NCAA Eligibility Center and be put on our Institutional Request List, or IRL, and you must include a copy of their test score with their transcript. Once your prospect has been approved for the visit, the pre-approval form will be returned to you with the pre-approval date noted. During the official visit, you will need to keep track of receipts and paperwork, as you will have a list of documents you must turn in after the visit. You will complete the Record of Official Visit form, and at the bottom of that form is a checklist of other materials that need to be turned in. These include all of the pre-approval paperwork, copies of all receipts associated with the visit, student host paperwork, and if the prospect engages in a tryout during the visit, the tryout paperwork as well. As we finish this tutorial on recruiting rules, I would like you to keep in mind some best practices. First of all, you need to document all of your recruiting contacts. While I do not require that you turn in phone or text logs, you do need to keep track, especially of your first phone calls, first mailings, first text messages, and the like. If we ever have to submit a violation or a waiver for recruiting, we will be asked to supply specific timeframes and even documentation of contacts and calls. Whatever method you use for documenting your recruiting is fine, as long as there is documentation. NCAA rules also require that we keep these recruiting records for 7 years, so we will be expected to provide these records if asked. As another best practice, I encourage you to keep your recruiting calendars where you can easily refer to them. While football and basketball coaches have more involved recruiting calendars, all coaches must be aware of dead periods. Finally, as you get going with bringing prospects to campus, please plan ahead by having recruits put on our IRL and having transcripts evaluated. Since prospects must be pre-approved for official visits, you will need to plan for these and not expect that they will be approved the day before a visit. And after the visit, you need to have the paperwork turned in within a week so that documents don't get lost and recruits forgotten. I'm sure you would like to get reimbursed in a timely manner, so be sure to get recruiting paperwork turned in promptly. Now that we have gone through the recruiting rules, here are a couple of questions for you.
Compliance question number 1. You are recruiting a real all-star in your sport, and you have put on your Washburn gear to attend your All-Stars event. At the event, you are sitting next to some people who see your Washburn sweatshirt and figure out that you're probably a coach who's attending the event in order to pick up some of their team's all-stars. They attempt to start up a conversation with you. What do you do?
Compliance question number 2. Here's the scenario. You will choose which options are permissible. You are coaching in one of the biggest volleyball matches of your career. You are tied at 2 sets apiece in the national finals. It's been an exciting match so far, with the crowd going wild. The atmosphere is electric. You instruct your graduate assistant coach to A. Take a picture of the crowd during the break before the 5th set and send it electronically to your top prospects to let them know how exciting it is to be competing at this level. B. Take a short video of the arena and send it to your top prospects so they can see the venue. Or C. Telephone your top prospect and put it on speakerphone so that she can hear Coach Herron's motivational speech before the 5th set.
Be sure to email your answers to the compliance questions by the end of the month. Happy recruiting, everyone.